In the land of Umuaka, there lived a young ward named Obi who worked for the king. The king was very fond of him and went everywhere with him. Obi had one habit. He said, "Thank God for everything." If someone sneezed, Obi would say, "Thank God." If someone hit their leg on a chair, Obi would shout, "Thank God." If rain fell during sunshine, Obi would dance and say, "Thank God." Even when the palace cat stole meat from the pot, Obi smiled and said, "Thank God." The king often laughed and shook his head. "Obi, you and this your thank God." But Obi would only grin and reply again, "Thank God, my king." Everyone in the palace knew that wherever Obi was, they would surely hear those two words, "Thank God." One bright morning, the king called out, "Obi, get ready. We are going hunting today." Obi jumped with joy. "Thank God, my king," he said, as usual. The king laughed and shook his head. Soon, they rode into the thick forest, followed by a few guards. The trees were tall, and birds sang above them. After hours of walking, the king spotted a big antelope drinking from a stream. He aimed his gun carefully and pulled the trigger, bang! But instead of shooting forward, the gun burst backward and shot off his thumb. The king screamed in pain. "Oh! My thumb! My thumb! My thumb!" he cried as blood dripped to the ground. Obi ran to him quickly, looked at the thumb, and shouted, "Thank God, my king." The guards froze. The king stared in shock. His face turned red with anger. "What did you just say, Obi?" "Thank God, my king." Obi said again. That was the moment the king's anger boiled like fire. He could not believe his ears. His thumb had just fallen off and his hand was bleeding. The pain was sharp, yet Obi was shouting, "Thank God." "Guards," the king roared. "Take this foolish boy away from my sight and throw him into the prison." Obi blinked in surprise. "My king, did I do something wrong?" "Yes," the king shouted. "You laughed at my pain." Before Obi could say another word, two guards dragged him away. They threw him into a dark prison room. The door slammed shut. Inside, Obi sat on the cold floor. Meanwhile, in the palace, the king sat with his bandaged hand, frowning and angry. He muttered to himself, "Thank God for this pain. What nonsense." But that night, as he tried to sleep, the king couldn't stop hearing those two words echoing in his head, "Thank God." Days passed, and the king's wound slowly healed, but his thumb was gone forever. He now had only 4 fingers on that hand. Each time he looked at it, his heart would be filled with anger. He refused to see Obi or even hear his name. But no matter how hard he tried to forget, those words kept echoing in his mind, "Thank God, my king." One morning, he stood by his window, staring at the wide forest beyond the palace walls. "I don't need anyone," he said to himself. "I can hunt alone." He took his bow, mounted his horse, and rode off into the thick forest without a single guard. The forest was silent. The wind hissed through the trees. Deeper and deeper he went, chasing a sound he thought was an antelope. Suddenly, he realized he could no longer see the path home. The air felt strange. The birds had stopped singing. A shadow moved behind him. The king froze. He slowly turned his head, and saw eyes watching him through the bushes. Before the king could move, strange men jumped out from behind the trees. Their faces were painted with red and white clay. They wore animal skins and carried sharp spears. "Who are you?" the king shouted, stepping back. The men didn't answer. They laughed loudly and tied his hands with strong ropes. He tried to fight, but they were too many. They dragged him through the forest, his crown falling off his head. His royal clothes tore on thorns. His feet bled as they pulled him into a dark camp filled with fire and smoke. The men danced around him, beating drums and singing in a strange language. The king's heart beat fast. He knew he was in great danger. One of the men pointed at him and shouted, "This one will be our sacrifice." The others cheered and clapped. The king trembled in fear. The strange men brought out a very big pot and placed it on the fire. They poured in water, then started cutting carrots and onions. The king watched in horror as the water began to boil. They danced around him, singing louder and louder. One of them shouted, "Tonight we will cook for the gods." The king fell to his knees, crying, "Please, don't kill me," he begged. But they didn't listen. They tied his legs tighter and pushed him closer to the pot. The smoke rose high into the dark sky. The king shut his eyes in fear. Two of them lifted him up by his arms. The king screamed, "Please, I beg you." Just then, one of the men stopped dancing. He pointed at the king's hand and shouted, "Wait! Wait! Look at his hand." Everyone came closer. They saw that the king's thumb was missing. The man gasped loudly and said something in their strange language. The others began to whisper and look afraid. Their leader frowned and shook his head. "No. This is an abomination. We cannot offer an incomplete man to the gods. It is a curse." At once, they dropped the king and stepped back. "Go away from here," one of them shouted. They untied him roughly and kicked him toward the forest path. The king fell hard on the ground. He looked up, confused and shaking. They shouted again, "Leave before the gods get angry with us." Without looking back, the king ran into the dark forest. Branches scratched his face, but he didn't stop. His feet were bleeding, his clothes were torn, but he didn't care. He just wanted to get home. He tripped over roots and fell many times, but each time he got up again. The sound of nightbirds and crickets filled the air. He could still hear drums echoing behind him. At last, he saw a faint light far away, the light from his palace. Tears rolled down his face. When the king reached the palace, he made haste to the prison. The guards were shocked. His crown was gone, his robe was torn, and he was limping badly. "Open the prison," the king shouted. "Bring Obi out now." The guards hurried to obey. When Obi came out, the king held out his amputated four-fingered hand and cried out, "Thank God, my word. You were right, thank God my thumb was cut off. It saved my life." Then the king told Obi all that had happened in the forest, and apologized to Obi for imprisoning him. Then Obi replied, "Thank God for imprisoning me, my king." The king looked surprised. "Thank God again? Why?" Obi laughed softly and said, "My king, if you had not put me in prison, I would have gone hunting with you. The men in the forest would have caught me instead and used me for their sacrifice, because my body is complete." He smiled and added, "So, thank God for imprisoning me because the prison saved my life."